So today's video starts with a lesson, and that lesson is about paying your debts. And when you owe somebody a favor and they call, you show up. And that's the important part of this. This video is brought to you by Drive Protected Shop, who has provided the PPF wrap that we are putting on this beautiful brand new Model S Plaid. And it is in that new ultra red and it looks stunning. So we've already removed the front bumper cover. We're going to use fishing line to get that off, and then the rest of it just kind of peels off with your fingers. So here's the plan. So like I do all of my vehicles with PPF, I do it in thirds, and it's really the only way to do this manageably. So the car is clean. However, we're going to clean it again, but we're going to do the front bumper, the two front fenders, and the hood as a third. And then once that's done, we'll pull it back out, wash the middle of the car, do the A-pillar and all four doors. And then we'll pull it out one more time and we'll take care of the back. So then we'll do these rear quarter panels, the rear bumper, and the whole lift gate on the back. So while we're getting everything done, I am about to wash this. And a very important note about washing these vehicles before you put PPF on: do not use your normal car wash stuff, your stuff with nano space age stuff. Don't use that. You only want to use Dawn dish soap, and the reason is those other soaps, although they have awesome chemicals in them that really give you some good benefits, you do not want that on the surface. You don't want anything on the surface of this car. So if you waxed it recently, or even worse, if you ceramic coated it already, that's going to be a problem. But for our case, we're going to be able to just wash this with Dawn dish soap, and then we can get right into the install. So don't know how long this is going to take. Usually it takes about 8 to 12 hours total. We'll see how much help Bill is, who is, I'm sure, excited about this learning experience. So we're going to dive into this. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll be done with this. We'll see how far we get tonight, and we'll put this in a nice time motion for you. All right, so here's the situation. We went to the hardware store to get that light because it's kind of dark in here. Lighting is critical to get this as good as possible. It's very, very hard to see the bubbles as you start to lay this out. So having as much light as possible is critical. And this is gonna have to do for now. But what we're gonna do next is a very important step. We've already cleaned the car, and what we have to do is now each panel as we go, we're gonna wipe it down with alcohol. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. But basically what we wanna do is put alcohol on our microfiber towel, and we're gonna rub the entire panel. So the first panel we're gonna do, which I recommend, is the hood. It is the easiest on the front quarter of this car, or the front third of the car, I should say. And that'll get you at least started and get you into the groove of installing PPF. And as you can see, we just have some water spots from washing. It's not a big deal. All these panels are gonna be wet the entire time, so don't worry about getting it super dry. Just get it clean, get all the debris, all the dust off, and wipe it down with alcohol so you can get what is left. So there's like these little specks here we want to get out, and a little bit over here that I saw while I was washing it. So alcohol to remove this, so that way we have a perfectly clean surface to lay this PPF. Part's always forgotten about. Make sure you do all the edges around here, because this is where the film's going to wrap over. You want this to really stick, so make sure all of this debris, all this dust, all this gunk is gone underneath the lip of the hood. Now for the important step everybody always asks about. I recommend getting 2 different color spray nozzles, so that way you know without looking too hard which one is which. So red I always use as tack, so this is what makes it stick, and blue we'll use this as slip. So this is how we spray the whole panel down with this, and allows us to move the PPF before we set it in place. So the formula is pretty simple. For a slip, we're gonna fill this whole bottle up, and then we're gonna take a few drops of Johnson baby shampoo, and that's it. And you're gonna swirl it, not shake it. And then the tack solution, it's basically 1 part alcohol to 10 parts water, and I'm using 70%. Be very careful with this. You can also just use plain water, but if you use too much alcohol, you will burn off the adhesive on the PPF. So you need to get this roughly right, not too much of the alcohol. And if you're using 90% alcohol, you're gonna use a lot less, just to make sure you don't burn off that adhesive. So with that, we've got some distilled water here. and we're going to mix this up. If you already have a couple of 32-ounce bottles and they're all the same color, you can also just write with tape. That works well too. Anything you can do to visually see without reading is always going to be better. So if you have 2 different colored tapes or 2 different colored markers, do yourself that favor, because you're gonna be moving and not thinking about every little detail, and you might grab the wrong bottle. So that's how you mix them, pretty easy. All right, so step 1, we're gonna coat the entire hood now with our slip solution. So first thing we want to do is get this right there we go. Get the whole thing kind of started. And if you notice anything, this is a great time to use your hands to wipe it clean. And don't be alarmed when you put the PPF on and you see stuff under the film. You're gonna peel the film back and wipe it out. This is your only chance to get that stuff out. If you see something, address it now. So now we're gonna work right down the middle all the way to these ridges on the very top of the hood here. And then we will probably most likely have to do some resetting on these corners, as they're in the corner, but they might be, you know, off center or whatever. So we'll have to redo some of that as we work the film, but let the film tell you where it needs to go. Start in the middle, streaks, and it'll make sense here in a minute. So I'm gonna do the driver's half first, and then we'll move over to the passenger side. All right, so now that we have the hood basically laid down, we now have to get all the edges where it wraps around down. It's basically all 4 edges except for the fact that we have 2 additional over the lights where these flaps are. So these gotta come down, and this is why it's so important to clean up underneath. Now, what I've learned about this is it can take a couple of days to get all this to lay down perfect, but we're gonna pre-spray everything with alcohol. And a lot of what's happened is all that slick solution that we've sprayed underneath and shot out to the edges has really gotten onto this adhesive, so it's hard to get the stuff to lay down right. The other thing I'm gonna show you, as we're doing this, here's a really good spot to show you. As we're pulling this around, you need to pay attention to the top. So you see where this air is getting trapped. So we wanna make sure that we're also squeegeeing that out. And here's the technique that I have learned that seems to work pretty well. So to start with, I'm gonna take a microfiber. Be very careful. Do not want this to touch the adhesive side of this. So really it's just for the edge. And I'm basically just gonna use my thumb and just kind of push down and slowly start going more and more around this arch. And that's just helping to set the corner. So that way we have way less chance of this getting air there, but it's still obviously gonna be a risk. So you're gonna wanna do this until the film starts pointing 90 degrees. Like right here, it's starting to point 90 degrees, which means we got a good stick right here. So just gonna continue to go back and forth like this until I get the whole thing to start to stick and face 90 degrees. All right, so we just finished the hood itself. So one panel down, and I'll have to look at the clock. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while though. So it takes quite a bit of time to do this, especially getting it done right. But even then, and so now that things are starting to dry out, I can start to see some of the bubbles we're gonna have. The good thing is so far, these are kind of air bubbles. These are easy to address. Even the ones with moisture on are easy to address, but we need a diabetic's needle to do this. And you're basically gonna poke a hole and you're gonna squeegee out that air and lay the film down. But other than that, that's normal stuff. You're gonna have that. Even professionals have that. The thing I'm happy with though is how the edges turned out. I think it turned out really good. This might have been quite possibly the best hood I've done so far. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it turned out great. Edges look good. Everything wrapping around looks good. So nothing really stands out, at least for now, but until we're out in the sun tomorrow, I'm sure there's gonna be some things. I see a piece of debris that got under there. Right here in front of my finger. So this stuff is, you kind of see it, right there. So it's best to get this stuff out before you lay this down, but this is why lighting is so important, because you can't see this stuff if you don't have the best lighting. But I'm not seeing a bunch of it, so that's good. So anyways, for now, the hood is done. So the next two panels would be the front two fenders, but it's getting to be about dinner time. So I think it's a good time to take a break, maybe get some food before we tackle the rest of the front of this car. And then we'll see how we feel after that. Basically the fenders, they're not too bad. They're pretty easy to do. Definitely easier than the hood. The front bumper, I'm not sure yet because I haven't done an S. I will say this, the Model X was way easier to do than the Model Y or the Model 3. So I'm hoping that translates over to the Model S as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. So for now, let's punch the clock and take a moment. And we'll be back with the fenders. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and knock out this fender now. The nice thing is this is pre-cut, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you look, the way that the body is, this has like a contour. So this is a tough spot to do. But the way that we're gonna lay this thing out, basically you're gonna kind of lay it in place. And we're gonna start right here. And we're gonna hit this corner. Then we're gonna get this lined up. And then we'll work our way down to the bottom here before then going to the front of the vehicle. So In that order seems to work the best because we can get this lined up pretty well, but even then, probably not gonna get it perfect. So it's pretty tough because of this little contour and the way that the material kind of stretches and these little crevices. Hard to get it to stay down. So probably one of the tougher parts of the job, but should be able to knock this fender out here pretty quickly. All right, so we just finished the passenger side fender. Both fenders are done now. Came out pretty good, actually. This camera spot was a lot easier on this Model S than it is on the 3Y, which is nice. So not a lot of work to be done in the coming days to keep it down or anything. It's down, so pretty good cut. And I'm pretty happy with the edges. So now the fun part is generally this front bumper. So multi-piece, so it makes it a lot easier. Definitely go with the multi-piece. We're going to have this thing set out. Basically, I'm gonna unroll this. We're gonna start with the top portion, which goes from side to side, and then we'll put that down. That's how this thing's gonna lay out. I'm gonna set up the camera now, and we'll get started on this front bumper. All right, so this is a one-piece bumper. And basically how this is gonna work is you'll see we're not all the way to the edges, and it's gonna require some stretching. Now, the good thing is, looking at this, that's not too bad. This actually might not need too terribly much. This one's basically only, yeah, so this won't need a whole lot of stretching. So this won't be too bad. But basically, what we wanna do is we're gonna start here, here, match up right here, and get our corners right all the way around. And then we will work our way over, hitting all the corners, and then we'll come through the middle section, work our way over here, and do the same thing on this side. So I'll bring you along on each side as we go. So this morning came up, took a look at everything, and honestly, it's looking pretty good. A lot of the normal trouble areas are looking really good, honestly. Edges look pretty decent, and you know, some of the bubbles you can start to see the next morning. So once we get this outside, you'll be able to see these bubbles a bit better. But normal, really hard areas, like down here in the corner, looks pretty good. But you'll see along the edges for that full next day, just keep going over these and pushing these down all around the edges. You'll have to do this all throughout the day. But today's plan is to move on from the front, and we'll be doing the A-pillars and the doors first, and then we will start working on the back of the car. The sides are not too difficult. Really, with the doors, it's about getting the corners lined up right, and as you're stretching this, to not get it too bunched up in the middle. So it does require a little bit of finesse. A-pillars are very simple. The biggest tip on the A-pillars is to make sure that we get the alignment right closest to the sunroof. So when we start laying that out, I'll show you what I mean, but it's one piece, pretty simple. So we're gonna start unrolling that now. All right, so this turned out really nice. We got it down. There's a couple of bubbles that we will have to address later, but laid out really nice. Actually, very little, almost no stretching involved in laying out this panel. So be careful when you're doing that. As you saw in the video, I was swiping up and down instead of back and forward to prevent the stretching, because it was very little, maybe a quarter inch or so that needed to be stretched. So now we're gonna work on the doors, starting with this front door. I've already cleaned the door with alcohol. Do not forget, this is very important. When you are cleaning this door, do not forget to clean inside here. So the film is going to wrap around this door on the bottom and here, maybe not on the bottom, I can't remember, but it does not wrap around the front edge, but it will back here. You need this clean so that the film will stick properly. So don't forget that. So with that, let's go ahead and lay out this front door. So this wrap went so much smoother than I could have expected. I'm actually pleasantly surprised in how it went. Was this the easiest Tesla to wrap? No. And I'll explain why here momentarily, but I think when I was counting, I think this is the 6th car I've done PPF on. So there are some things that I've learned along the way that help. And in this case, it really did help. So I'll talk about some of those as well, but the overall setup here. So with code BTG, I think you're talking in the ballpark of maybe 2,500 bucks for an entire full wrap. You don't have to do a full wrap, but of course, depending on how you like your cars to be and what you use them for, I fully wrap all my cars, and that's what we did here. This beautiful ultra red. And one of the really awesome things about PPF is it's not just for protection, but especially these newer wraps, and this one is no exception. You don't have to worry about yellowing over time, and you can still highlight this beautiful color on this Tesla and not worry about that kind of getting shaded or whatever. Doing this, I knew it was going to take 2 days, and that's basically what it was. We spent about 8 hours on the first day, and that was just doing the front third of this vehicle, and that's pretty normal. Doing the second 2/3 we did yesterday throughout the whole day, and I think we spent probably 12 hours, so right around 20 hours to fully wrap this car. And that's pretty normal. I'm not a professional, you know, a pro could probably knock this out in half the time, but you know, the cheapest quote I saw for the Model S was $7,000. So if you're willing to put in the work, if you have the ability to try, you can certainly save a ton of money doing this yourself. Like I said, about 2,500 or so, in that ballpark, to do this all on your own, and about 2 days of your time. At minimum, I highly recommend at least wrapping the front of the vehicle. They have a partial and a full frontal that you can choose from. And let's get a little bit closer, and I'll show you why that's something you might want to really consider if you do have a Tesla. So as you are looking at the front of this vehicle, what you should notice is instead of a big black plastic or chrome grille, it's a big flat painted surface, and all the road debris, all the rocks, all just pelt the front of this vehicle, and this chips very easily because of the type of abuse it's exposed to. So wrapping this will help stop that. And when you go all the way around the vehicle, obviously you don't have to be a genius to figure out what other things this could be useful for and preventing from happening. Now, I want to be fair in what I'm about to say, and that is that I'm not a professional. That said, I have done this a number of times, so I have a little bit of experience that does help me, but you can absolutely do this yourself. I remember my first one, I was able to do it, and with Dry Protected Shop, they do have now a guarantee, so if you mess something up, they'll send you a replacement panel. And that's part of the benefit of working with them, is a lot less risk involved in trying this yourself. They also give you access to their whole academy, which is way more detailed videos on each panel of each car than what I've showed you here. But I'm going to show you what the results look like a little bit closer, even at my level, just to give you an idea of what you should expect. Because yes, it sounds great paying $2,500-ish versus $7,000. But what does it look like saving that? Because you're not going to be able to get a professional finish doing it yourself. But I think it looks pretty dang good. But that said, there are some blemishes. So let's take a closer look and show you what those look like and what you should expect when saving about $5,000. Okay, so right here on the front of the vehicle, on this particular car, some of the normal problem areas I didn't really have this time, which is great. But down here below, I can never get this just right. But you can see these fingers. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get these straightened out while we were laying the panel. So those are there. Now they're underneath the bumper, so they're not very visible. That said, if we come over this way, here's another example of an area that I kind of didn't do the best. You know, another low spot that you're not really going to be able to see that well. But I couldn't get this perfect, and that's how that part ended up. There are not many on this particular car, but there are some spots where this particular one is That's like a piece of dust or dirt or something that got under the film that we didn't see while we were laying down. And then you can also see a number of air bubbles, and some of these have water. These we're gonna take care of with a needle. You need a diabetic's needle to take those out, and I'll show you how to do that, of course. Gonna poke through that film very carefully. This one. Okay. And it's okay if you have to poke it a second time, but usually just continue to work it, it'll get it out. And then just like that. So it's pretty easy to do. Don't worry about this little hole here. It's a self-healing film. There is technically a hole there, but it's not anything to worry about. It's not going to impact the life of this film. Now let's move on to an air bubble. So right here, we actually have two different types of bubbles. One of these is a bubble because of debris. One of these is a bubble because of air. For this one down here, it's because of air. So it's super simple. Poke a hole, push it down. Gone. Now the one up here is because of debris, and the problem is you're not going to be able to get that debris out, so you can't dig it out, but we can get rid of as much of the air as we can. And you still got to poke that hole, and then you'll push it down until all that's left is that little piece of dust or whatever else is under that film. So that's how we're going to tackle this. So just know at the end, if there is debris, that's what it's going to look like when it's done. There's nothing else you can do about that. So that's why it's so important to have good lighting and to do a good job of getting all the stuff that you catch while you're putting the film down.